Okay, can you tell us, Chloe, or actually, in fact, tell my grandma what Mercator is?
Very simply, what we do is we track a whole bunch of interactions that happen through the life cycle of a construction project to be able to identify really early project opportunities for our customers.
Feel like when most of startup founders we speak with, they are founded by either generic investors or vertically orientated. Not many angels. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about angels?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the one thing I've learned through this journey is that the people who are sitting in your shoes in another company are the ones that you want to be spending the most amount of time with.
Did you end up, therefore, getting the investors that you ultimately wanted?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I made a really concerted effort to make sure that the people that we brought around the table were operators.
How do you choose your mentors? Yeah, that's the question.
Chemistry, honestly, it's really challenging to work with a person that I don't, have massive respect for or, admire or get along with.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Bricks and Bytes podcast, where we dive into construction and AEC technology. Before we get started though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode.
This episode is brought to you by Build Vision, transforming construction supply chain by bringing contractors, manufacturers, and stakeholders onto a single software platform. Visit buildvision.io to find out more.
Chloe, nice to meet you. Could you give our audience a little bit of an introduction to you, and perhaps how your past has built you up to building Mercator, as we have just learned the pronunciation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a Canadian founder. I am operating right now in Texas, but our team is mainly out of Canada. My background's in data strategy. It's in marketing and advertising. We kind of found a roundabout way into construction. It's kind of odd, actually, because my family's in construction. My dad's in construction and never thought I'd go into the industry. He always wanted me to be an engineer. But then I went into more the marketing and advertising side, into the data strategy side. I really started to understand how do we leverage all of this data that we're constantly producing to find better market insights and be able to find pockets of opportunity. And that's really kind of what came to be with Mercator, was looking at all the data that's being produced in construction and how can we stitch that together using AI to identify pockets of opportunity.
What was the ignition point that you got interested in construction then?
So we're a bit of an oddball in the startup game because normally you find companies that are, they've lived and breathed the problem that they've had, right? Over the course of my career, I've had the opportunity to work across, over 30 different industries, right? So I've seen data come from healthcare, from automotive, from consumer goods, from construction, from manufacturing. I've seen it from all over the place. And so we actually did a market research study when we first went out to build Mercator. We looked at, okay, we know we want to be solving problems for business developers and market researchers. How do we actually source those problem spaces and really understand them well? Well, we decided to go through a market research study and actually speak to a whole bunch of folks. And so we spoke to folks in construction, transportation, manufacturing, healthcare, insurance, kind of all over the place. And it gave us the ability to really refine down where is that actual problem space the most painful, and who has it in the kind of greatest volume. And that was really where construction was like, oh my goodness, we don't really know what's happening outside our four walls, outside of our relationships. And so it was just kind of serendipitous that I also have a family in construction too.
Did you always have the entrepreneurial bug where you're selling sweets to the kids in high school when you're in a higher grade than them?
You know what?
Lemonade.
Not bribery. But I did, oh my goodness, it was like before Pinterest was a thing, I was selling like face products out of my locker, but they were like honey, oatmeal, yogurt, and I'd sell them
Nice.
to kids at school. Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good. It's the foundation of success for building Mercator, I'm sure.
Of course.
Okay, Martin, should we dive into Mercator or you want to
No, I think let's get into it.
let's go. Okay, can you tell us, Chloe, or actually, in fact, tell my grandma what Mercator is?
Yeah. Fair
Simply.
So, in very boiled down, what we do is we track a whole bunch of kind of very simply what we do is we track a whole bunch of interactions that happen through the life cycle of a construction project to be able to identify really early project opportunities for our customers. And so what that means is anything from a land transaction through to some permitting, for example, we're able to kind of pinpoint when are people starting to think about building a construction project, and then how do we get you in front of the person that you sell to start building that relationship well before they need you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this would be this could be anyone that's trying to sell any kind of product into construction.
Yeah, I mean, primarily we work with general contractors, subcontractors, suppliers. We also work with service providers to the construction industry. And as a startup, you kind of narrow in on who you focus on first, and then you kind of broaden that out as you become more established in those segments. And so for us today, we really focus in on those GCs, subs, and suppliers.
So your system would track and be notified of perhaps, like you say, like a land sale or something that could lead to an opportunity. And then I guess your customers would log into some form of platform and see these opportunities and then be like, right, this is something we should go after. And then we're going to pitch.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to the kinds of lead generation tools you experience today, right? You set up some saved searches, you get an email on a daily basis. I think the real key differentiator with Mercator is that all of this intel is happening before the bidding phases, right? And so typically what we've done in the past is we've used bid management tools. It's almost like using a marriage registry as a dating app, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're looking at folks that have already built relationships and projects where there's already established connections happening. And trying to kind of, wiggle your way into that. Instead, we're truly kind of a dating app in that sense, where it's very early on. People are trying to find, okay, I'm already working with my architect, for example. My designs are 25% completed, or I'm still working through my pro forma, for example. And it's those moments that you want to get involved as a general contractor, or vice versa as a subcontractor. You want to get involved when the GC has been awarded the project, contracts have been signed. That way, that there's actual funding behind this project, and it's going to go.
Mm-hmm. So now you are in Texas, or you operate in Texas. Are you only in Texas or in other places in the US?
Yeah, so
or Canada?
We've actually refined down to focus just on Texas for now. So we're in Austin, we're in Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, and then building out the surrounding areas. And then we'll be launching into Florida next, and then kind of growing and expanding accordingly we're getting dragged into, it's so fascinating, so many different places that our customers operate, even they might be big names in Texas, but, they operate in Denver, for example, or the Research Triangle on the East Coast. It's just it's very interesting where we're getting pulled into in terms of where construction is really booming right now.
What stops you from migrating to different geographies or different states?
Yeah, I guess I like to say that we shovel a lot of shit because we do. Very much like a Spotify, you don't come to Spotify and upload, your own music. You come to Spotify and that music's already on there. Very similarly, every single construction project, when we open up a geographical area, is on Mercator. And so for us, we do all the heavy lifting to stitch all these different data sets together that describe the construction activity, both 100% on the private side and 100% on the public side of what's happening in that region. And so there's quite a bit of heavy lifting that has to happen before we launch a market. And so we're getting more efficient at that. And that's one of our kind of major levers that we're pulling in terms of scalability. But that's definitely one of our largest moats.
Chloe, regarding the product, is the product the access to the platform, or there is some? How do you define your product within Mercator?
Oh yeah, I mean it's a desktop app, right? Like a web app, just like you would access anything like a Zoom info or like a Canva, for example. You log in online on your desktop, and then you're able to access, our map environment, or saved searches, or dashboards, your collaborative features, your company profiles. See, not only what one company is building as a function of you finding a project on Mercator, but seeing the entire profile of work that they've done. Who do they work with? What have they done in the past? What are they currently working on? Right, giving you all that robust information just from your desktop.
And how does this technology work, Chloe? Is it like I'm going to be really, really like simple here and just say you have a bunch of scrapers that are scraping the internet? Is it as simple as that? Maybe you can help me and talk to that a little bit.
Fortunately, I wish it was. I wish it was a whole bunch of scrapers. I mean, we're really not an input-output kind of product, right? We're not just like, scraping and regurgitating, right? We're actually stitching together a fabric of data together that helps to describe a project. And through that, we're able to then build, kind of a company network hub to understand how do different companies or what relationships do different companies have with other companies. So unfortunately, I wish it was that simple. But it's a whole bunch of data sets kind of layered on top of one another that feed into a proprietary model, a couple proprietary models that we have that ultimately then kind of output, okay, here are your projects, and then here are your companies, and here's what's happening in the entire market.
Is that data like publicly available data, or stuff that you've also accumulated?
It's a good question. It's what a lot of our customers ask us too, is where is the data coming from? So like I said before, unlike a tool where you're coming in and you're inputting your own data, we don't allow anyone to input data into our product, right? So and that's to ensure accuracy and reliability of the data. So our data comes from partnerships that we have with cities and municipalities, government, regulatory boards, sometimes private entities as well, where their main business isn't generating data, but we actually work with them to build new revenue streams to buy data off the back end. And then we'll also create our own. Back in the day, I was in marketing and advertising. We built kind of a rapid market intelligence product, and it was relatively simple because we got to connect into all these APIs that, did your SEO ranking and saw what kind of traffic you got to your site, and could pull down what ads does someone have in market, and that was just kind of bringing all those together in one place. When we stepped into doing this for construction, it was a little bit of a stark realization that, oh, okay, a lot of this data has never been produced yet. So we actually have to go ahead and do it. So, processing things like drawing packages to understand who's involved in the project so far, what's getting built. Like there's a lot of computer vision, a lot of LLMs, a lot of natural language processing that we need to do in order to kind of create the data sources we need to feed into our own models.
Can you elaborate a bit more about these LLMs and how important is large language models within Mercator?
It's a foundational piece, right? We have to detect from only a handful of words what is getting built there so that we can determine, what product is getting developed, right? And so that's not always, written in plain text. Sometimes that has to be inferred. And so LLMs, I can tell you that we started doing this before LLMs were built, and the amount of manual encoding that we needed to do in order to feed the first models was absolutely like nuts compared to what you have, available today. And so being able to tap into all this new technology as it's getting launched is it's revolutionary for a product like ours.
So you mentioned GCs and subcontractors for your work. We've also spoke to people before on here that might that build products for product manufacturers to help get into the sales revenue. I'm just curious as to why you picked those as target customers and perhaps not things like product manufacturers or material manufacturers.
So our roadmap is quite broad in terms of who we know we can service. And like I said before, as a startup, you do have to kind of single out those folks that are at quick returns, right? And can see the value and can apply the value. And I think that that's really where, as we started the journey, and our first proof of concepts were just me and open data and 10 days of development and spreadsheets and dashboards, right? Like it was super, super rough. But we did that across so many different stakeholders within the construction kind of life cycle that it really helped us narrow in on who can get really instant value from this first product that we're building, which is this kind of business development product. And that was really where we saw kind of the quick turnaround and high pain point with the general contractors and our subcontractors. And I would say that our subcontractors and suppliers have really only started to materialize in the last probably about 6 to 8 months, where when we started opening up trials, we had this flood of suppliers and subcontractors come knocking on our door, and we didn't actually realize that they were almost actually more.
Hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks and Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
More incentivized than their GC counterparts because it is slightly more transactional. The contracts are smaller. It's quick hits instead of these long built out relationships. A lot of our GCs will joke and laugh that, pre-construction is actually just free construction. Because it's a lot of work up front that you don't often get paid for, right? And it can sometimes mean that projects get delayed at that stage or, can take a really long time to come to fruition. And so when we started seeing a lot more of these kind of quick hit, folks driving around in their trucks needing a better way to know about projects that are actively getting developed and have proper funding behind them to basically reduce the denominator of their hit rate. That's really where that started to kind of pick up, and we said, okay, well, let's broaden out. We didn't actually expect to broaden our ICP so quickly. And that's just kind of what naturally happened.
Yeah, found you in some ways. What do people see when they get into, like, if a project comes up and then like, okay, that looks cool, I'm gonna click on it or find out a little bit more information. What do they see? And then I will follow up. You don't have to answer now, and probably helps explain why I'm asking the question is to how did you get to the conclusion that that's the information that they needed to see in order for your product to be useful?
So I'll explain what a project detail page looks like, and then we'll go into that second question. So The project detail page for us is a place that centralizes everything about that project. So you need to be able to know what's happened there historically, who owns the land, details about that parcel, and then any activity that's occurred so far, in addition to any materials that have been created for that project so far, as well as contact information and then links out to their company profiles. So it's really like one-stop shop. Like you should really be looking at Mercator as like, if I need to know all the intel that's currently available about this one project all in one place, that's what our project detail pages show. Now, how did we get there? There's a lot of trial and error, but primarily through a beta program that we did last year. So last May, we actually brought together a group of general contractors to advise on the product. We knew that we had just secured funding. We knew that we had an opportunity to really take, this funding and turn it into something extraordinary in terms of the targets that we were trying to hit, in terms of making sure that we had product market fit and go to market fit. And as a result, by bringing all of these GCs around the table, we had the opportunity to do things like usability studies and value studies and language studies and really understand, like, okay, you're trying to get to an objective here. We are, you are here today. We're trying to make sure that we understand and can infer, because most people don't know what they want, right? So it's a mixture of, okay, what does ideal state look like? And then we know where we are today. And then our team has to kind of work through both data strategy and product development to figure out, okay, how do we massage this in a way that the user experience is very, very simple. The information is laid out in the order in which you'd want to receive it. It's very intuitive when you scan and read a project page that you understand exactly what's going on. So all of that was kind of it was a massive partnership that we did with industry and arguably one of the game changers, I think, that we I don't know if I want to say stumbled across, but I mean, we do things for a purpose and deliberately, right? So,
But like by doing the right things, also, I would say, like, if you're putting the work in, then you will ultimately, what looks like you're stumbling across something, you're kind of like, you are working towards that as well. So it's not just pure luck, right?
It's funny because when you are going through this and everything is so new and you're building an innovation, it does feel like stumbling. It feels like you stumble upon a lot of different things. When in reality, when you look back, it's almost like everything was leading you there.
Yeah.
Just didn't realize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm curious, did you build this page exactly as the feedback, as per feedback you received from these contractors, general contractors, or you kind of helped them discover certain things that they were not aware of, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where you have the difference between, verbatim building what your customers say they want in, very specific places. And then also the creative license of, you're here to innovate on their behalf, right? And I think that we did that really well, whereby we have our head of product and design is absolutely phenomenal at doing this, at really picking and choosing what makes sense from a, explicit directive to a creative input. And as a result, building something that is both innovative and, aligns with what the customer needs. And I think like that's some sorcery that, I don't have the answers to, but she's pretty incredible at doing it.
Reps.
Question I should probably ask earlier as well was, do you track these projects of a certain value, or every time, you can filter down everything? Okay. Everything for everyone.
Everything for everyone. It's kind of insane. In fact, actually, when I say 100% of all public and private projects, our customers, when they get in the product in the first couple of days, they almost feel a little creeped out. They're like, they wonder to themselves, like, oh, is this even legal?
Yeah,
They feel that it's there's just so
too
much
good to be true.
visibility. And the fact is that, a lot of the times what they're looking at is actually all stuff that's either in the open sphere and that they just never were able to stitch it together like that. We often talk about the fact that what Mercator's model does under the surface is the red string on the corkboard, right? To be able to do that across every single public and private project in a market seems just mentally overwhelming. But I mean, that's the power of pattern matching, right? Like that's the power we've been able to access using a lot of these AI tools.
Yeah, so you have access to so much of construction data in terms of how many projects of certain value will happen in certain locations. Can you utilize this data somehow in any way?
Yeah, so we're actually in the process of working with a couple new initiatives where we're starting to aggregate this data and start to build industry reports, right? Mercator truly at its core is the data set upon which we're building, right? We'll build interfaces like this first interface that we have for business developers. We'll build interfaces off of this data set. But truly at the core of it, it's everything underneath the surface, right? And so, for example, what we've done in the past is been able to build reports for cities where they're able to better work with industry because they're getting aggregated data and industry's getting aggregated data about what's happening between, the city and how the industry is building. And so as a result, giving them more agency on how they can engage together. So as a direct example of that, here in my hometown, we were helping the city with identifying at-risk secondary suites, right? And who builds at-risk secondary suites so that they can determine where should they send their inspectors, and then also help build policy for companies that are typically repeat offenders of at-risk secondary suites.
Yeah, I got a feeling there's further business coming.
Yeah.
We're scraping the surface of what we have the potential to do.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, before we move on to business model and some fundraising, maybe again I should have asked earlier, why did you move from Canada to the US with the operations?
I mean, for us, it came again, one of those things where you feel like you've stumbled into something, but in fact, everything was kind of leading you in that direction. We had opened up the Austin market well in advance of actually moving there. And one of the things that we realized was the US market kept kind of pulling us in that direction. And when we started going to market after this beta program that we had run that I just spoke about, as we started to go to market in Canada, what we recognized was just the level of effort that it would take for us to stand up all of the geographies we needed. And some of the major barriers that exist in kind of government policy in Canada were not present in the States. And so as a result, we looked at TAM, we looked at, feasibility, we looked at growth. And what we noticed was, if we wanted to launch in Vancouver, Toronto, we would need to open up 34 additional markets. And even then we're not covering, near as much of the 40 million population size as we would opening up 4 markets in the Texas Golden Triangle. That would give us 70% access to a 30 million person market. And it's just like, those numbers are just a stark contrast between the two countries. And it's not to Canada's fault. It's not like we didn't have innovators in the space who are interested in our product. It was rather just the size of the opportunity in the US was much larger and allowed us to just expand better and build the foundations we needed in order to hit kind of next milestones within our business.
Mm-hmm. I would guess that there's quite a lot of founders all across the world thinking of having similar thoughts about the US, perhaps, compared to where they are. What piece of advice would you give to yourself, actually, when you were at that point, to kind of speed up the process or to make a quicker and better decision? Or should you or should you not?
I'm pretty I'm pretty good at calling the shot when it needs to happen. I don't have many regrets where I was, I look back and I go, oh, I was sitting on that for too long. It was very useful to build the product locally, because being able to, like, we did not have the funds to refine the product itself in a different city, right? So being able to sit face to face with our customer profile in the city that we were in was huge when it came to product development. When it came to go to market, that was challenging, right? Because the market itself and the market makeup was challenging in where we were. But I would say that we called going to the, like, I remember sitting, this was earlier this year, sitting down with the team and going, if we were to do this all over again, I would strip down to one market and I would pick one geography and I would pump that geography and see what we can do in one state. And we literally pulled that trigger and we did that, right? We went after profitable revenue instead of, dealing with, the growth issues that we had in Canada, primarily from a tech perspective of being able to be in so many markets, because the landscape is so kind of so fractured in terms of, these major centers have so many kind of greater areas that it's quite challenging to launch a business like this, where you're reliant on the different municipalities having, the right regulations and the right data sets to be able to help us build our product.
Why not Ohio, but Texas?
I mean, just look at TAM. Texas for us is a massive TAM. So you've got Texas, Florida, and California, and New York State are kind of the four major, or the largest in population size, and then in TAM size as well. So, did you say Ohio? I mean, although I hold no bad will against Ohio, for us it was just size of state first.
Do you think that the latest presidential election is good news for business and you guys?
I think having the decision made, regardless of what direction, was a good, was a helpful outcome for us. I mean, that would have always happened, but basically everyone's been holding back budget, and especially private budget. And I'm talking specifically about real estate investment, because they want to know what's happening at the federal level. And so regardless of where that race ended, for us, it was just about moving past November 4th.
Okay, cool. So, how do you generate revenue?
Yeah, a subscription model. And in fact, actually, we spent a lot of time in our beta program trying to understand how our customers would want to buy our product. And a lot of them had this kind of mental framework of per users in their minds to begin with. But as we kind of tested per user in market, we recognized very quickly that what a construction company needs is consistent spend, forecastable spend, right? They need to be able to be confident that the cost isn't going to change on them dramatically, because they themselves are forecasting their own business, very much unlike a software as a service company, right? Where we are looking at recurring revenue, they're looking at project-based revenue, and they need to fill pipelines to a specific amount with a specific, hit rate, for example, to be able to forecast whether or not they're going to hire more people or let folks go, so on and so forth. So we needed to make sure that our product was kind of a repeatable spend for them. So that's why we stuck to just a market-based pricing. So we charge per market, and that is, constantly changing and evolving, but we charge per market. And right now that is inclusive of both the city center and the MSA, the kind of the Metroplex area, or I think it's called the Metropolitan Statistical Area or something like that.
You can have
So I think equivalent to our boroughs or
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So
It's actually borough. Borough is
Borough.
where is it
When
a
I-
badger or something lives?
borrow is when I borrow money.
and yet I feel like
Okay.
the US would call it a borough.
Okay.
So-
Go on, man.
So since you are now in the land of opportunity, in Texas, like what's the next steps? Are you thinking about profitability, perhaps, or growth, or where are you?
Yeah, so right now it's about for us it's about product market fit in the Texas region, right? So we are on track. Even actually, we're starting to exceed our revenue targets within the Texas market. And then that will allow us to open up the Florida market and from there expand nationally. And so really what we're looking at from a go-to-market standpoint is repeatability and consistency. And so if we can demonstrate that what we're learning here in Texas allows us to apply that to Florida and grow as well or even at more efficiently, then we feel like we've hit a really significant milestone within our business in terms of de-risking both the product and the go-to-market.
That's
I think-
interesting.
Go on, man.
So I always struggle with actually the PMF. Can you tell me or us when you know when you will achieve product market fit?
Oh my gosh,
In your
you're
case.
putting me on the spot, Martin. This is so contested.
Yeah, this is quite a deep question, huh?
Well, because I said I struggle with it in general, as I try to understand better.
I think it can be defined in many different ways. I think we adopt kind of two different definitions for it. So one is that the product itself is actually solving the problem that the market has, and so the actual like product to market is a fit in that definition. And then the other definition is that the market is actually pulling your product in, like they need it,
Mhm.
and the market is demanding it, right? And I think that's maybe more the traditional definition. And I would argue that folks have said that they feel it when more people are coming to them than they're going out. We've felt it when we opened up trials that more people were knocking at our door saying, hey, oh my goodness, this is our problem. And, we absolutely resonate with the messaging that you have. I don't know if that's a mixture of go-to-market fit and product market fit, but I truly believe that like the product does need to stand on its own 2 feet, and it does need to be able to solve the problem and repeatedly. And I think that that's really what we went after when we started our beta program. And then what we're going after with our go-to-market fit is really that definition of the market, like the way in which we are going to market them, the messaging, the channels are resonating with the audience, and the audience is starting to pull us into the market. So someone's going to write a comment about how all of that is wrong. Sure. But that's how we define it.
Hey,
People always say
exactly.
things.
You're entitled to that, and you have reason behind what you're saying. So, okay, I feel like we always ask this question far too late, Martin, but here we are, as we are now going to go into the fundraising journey. But
How are you?
when were you founded?
October 2020 we founded, but we didn't
Okay.
actually build a product until December 2021 is when we launched our first MVP.
That's a lot of living off of mum and dad's
Well,
bank
no.
account.
So here's the thing: is that I had a mentor of mine tell me, if you're gonna jump, and this was the best advice I ever got, if you're gonna jump and start your own thing, you need to be able to put a roof over your head and food on the table for at least 2 years, if not 3 years. So I jumped into a consulting gig first, and then started building Mercator from there. And something that I knew that no matter what, if Mercator were to fizzle out at that stage, I would absolutely be able to, survive it and continue bringing in, at least enough to cover my expenses.
Yeah, sounds sensible. Okay, so can you talk us through the fundraising journey? Maybe also, like you can go through maybe timescales and the stages, but why did you feel that you needed to raise funds?
That's a good question.
Well, I mean, in the first.
Because we all assume that the startup has to raise money.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the interesting thing is that there's so many different ways to access capital. And I would argue that, like we weren't educated enough going into this to know that, right? We spent that first year really just stumbling around, doing all kinds of things that we shouldn't have done, looking back on it. And I mean, sure, you call those learnings, but like talk about learn the hard way. We were just told that if we were going to build a startup, that no one would take us seriously from a venture perspective unless we had friends and family investment. And so we went after friends and family investment first. We raised a really small amount, frankly. I think it ended up being about like 145,000 Canadian. And we were terrified to spend it. Because we didn't want to waste the dollars of our family and our friends. And so that's why it took us so long to actually build a product. Is like I said, I used to do, 10 days of development, only open data, dashboards and spreadsheets, and, create little tiny micro versions of Mercator myself through proof of concepts before I ever spent $1, just to really see if there was something tangible here. And then from there, as we found customers that were eager to actually spend money with us and get this problem solved, we started to spend some of that friends and family money. And arguably, we didn't spend it all well. Learning that we shouldn't be paying contractors at that time $200 an hour. Like it was just like wild things, but
everyone has to go through it, I think.
So painful. I have such PTSD, but we ended up building a product, launching it, and that was kind of one of the goals we set for ourselves. By the end of 2021, we had a product and a paying customer. We did. December 19th, I think, is when we signed that contract. And we had a product that was, user couldn't even log in. It was just like, here's the site. There was like one user, or it only served one user, which was kind of crazy. And then we started to build a team around that and spend more of those dollars. And then we started to realize, okay, if we're going to build this in earnest, we're going to have to raise money. And so that's when we started raising our pre-seed, and that was 2022 February. And really all I did was I kept being told that, don't take money. Money's everywhere. Take money from the right people. And so I started reaching out to founders that were in the portcos of, or were within the portfolios of investors that I heard of. And I just wanted to have the conversation. Did you like taking money from them? Do you like working with them? And that snowballed for me. That became, introduction after introduction after introduction. And that's really how I got my first angel investors. That's how I got my first institutional investors. And then through the institutional investment, which arguably, again, one of those kind of almost stumble scenarios again, but obviously deliberate, we were able to meet other institutional investors, and that's where our seed round got preempted. And so we ended up doing that. And it was, I think I got in 2022, I think I got my term sheet on November 27th. So like right around US Thanksgiving. And then I think I pitched 90 investors. I was pitching like 9-hour days straight for 3 weeks. Like it was nuts. And we ended up closing on December 21st, the first tranche. And then we followed up by kind of January, had closed the remainder, and we had raised a 3.25 or 3.75 million USD round for our seed. And then it was the races.
And so you're at seed stage right now?
Correct. Yeah.
Did you Yeah, I'm just trying to tie a few things together. You mentioned that you've done like 9 hours of how many 90 pitches in total.
9 hours, 3 weeks,
It was insane.
92 pitches.
Yeah, if we do the math on that, like 30 minutes, 9 hours, 18 times 5. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Wow. So, did you end up therefore getting the investors that you ultimately wanted?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I made a really concerted effort to make sure that the people that we brought around the table were operators. It's really challenging in construction tech specifically because we don't grow like other companies. Like adoption in construction is such a long journey. And yet if you are, just look at Procore's journey, for example, like 12 years before they really started to take off, right? That's not going to be everyone's journey and it's getting faster. But if you are first to market in this ecosystem and you work very hard at building that reputation and that trust with customers, you get this amazing foothold. But it doesn't look like the same kind of growth curve that most kind of point solutions have, or tech solutions that have in other industries. And so it can be very challenging to work with more traditional investors that don't have that operator angle to them, right? Where they haven't been in the seat. And so they're looking at just, what's on the balance sheet versus versus an operator who's looking at the iterative learning, right? And I think that that's really what we wanted to bring around the table, where folks that really understood that, like, okay, we're going to take swings here, and some of them are going to be hits and some of them are going to be misses. But know that, fundamentally the solution market fit is absolutely a huge check mark, and that it's about just iteratively, coming back to first principles and building all of the blocks required to get the right product market fit, to get the right go-to-market fit, and to start setting up a lot of the foundations that'll de-risk this business.
By operators, you mean vertically orientated investors?
No, operators being folks that have been in my shoes, right? They've either been
people that have earned the right to become an investor, essentially.
Yeah. You want to say it that way? Yeah. I mean, folks that have run their own companies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on generic investors versus those?
Yeah, because I'm just looking at who your investors are, Chloe, and it looks to me that you have, based on my knowledge, maybe 2, and obviously Dustin as an angel is also within construction tech scene, so maybe like 3 key specialist investors and then 3 more generalists.
Yeah, if I think about who's around the table, Zakua is verticalized in construction, Builders VC verticalized in construction, although they kind of span outside into life sciences as well. And then Stand Up Ventures, the 51 are more kind of minority investors in that they invest in low visibility leaders, which I think is also really powerful. Like, I've had so much value having them part of the conversation, especially with the kind of network I've been able to tap into from a female founder perspective. And then we have quite a few, I guess, angels, if you want to call them, like Dustin Devon, former CEO of Building Connected, Mallory Brody, CEO of Bridget, Tiago da Costa, CEO of Toric. Those are all active construction tech active construction tech CEOs.
That's interesting. Well, how is the dynamic looking like with the angels? Because I feel like when most of startup founders we speak with, they are founded by either generic investors or vertically orientated. Not many angels. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about angels?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the one thing I've learned through this journey is that the people who are sitting in your shoes in another company are the ones that you want to be spending the most amount of time with, especially the ones that are either, within kind of an 18-month kind of orbit around kind of where you are, right? Whether that's before or after. where you are in your stage, or I should say ahead or behind. And then also just kind of folks who literally have done it, have gone all the way through the system, and built and sold and done what they've done with their company. And so I would argue that with the angels, like, to be able to call someone up and say, hey, I'm dealing with this challenge right now. What do you, like, how have you guys solved it? Or what did it look like at this stage for you folks? It's been a really interesting like knowledge base to tap into that's very different than your investors, right? Because you're talking to people who, yes, have a vested interest in your success because they are invested, but second, have real world experience they can bring to the table. And that's, yeah, I would say that the mix that we've created around us is an incredibly powerful one. It's one of the reasons why we've never gone through an accelerator. We've literally built an accelerator around us.
I love it. That's a great statement. Okay, can we move on to maybe go to market and marketing?
Yeah.
What do you think? Yeah, so Chloe, we touched on it briefly before we hit record, but could you talk to us? Maybe you could talk about like the evolution of your go-to-market, like what it was in the early days and now where it is now.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've had to learn how to do sales, right? I am not necessarily a sales founder, even though, I mean, I have a degree in public relations of all things. I've had to learn it, and through that, have had to learn what actually go to market means, what it looks like. How do you determine repeatability? And so, I don't think that because we've been spending so much time heads down building product over the last kind of handful of years, we've never really given go to market as a real investment as we were investing in product, right? So go to market up until literally, I want to say April of this year was just me, right? And that means I'm cold calling, I'm sourcing, like I'm doing all of this kind of lead generation effort. When we started stepping into Texas, it was this really magical opportunity to say, okay, I'm an unknown entity here, right? How do I go and make myself known? How do I make myself known, but then also my company known? And it was a lot of trial and error. It was, dropping by offices, faxing, cold calling. It was going to happy hours, networking events, meeting association leaders. It was a wide variety of things that we did, advertisement, just all kinds of things. And that's where we started kind of seeing, okay, this sticks, this doesn't stick. And I think the thing that is almost, I mean, everyone says it, but you don't really get it until you experience it, is how quickly iterating and seeing the returns on your tests can come back to you. And a no answer is a result. And so it was fascinating as we put all these different lines into kind of the go-to-market, I don't know, pond, to see which ones got bites really quick and then which ones got no bites at all, and then which ones got some nibbles, right? And that really helped us to further refine in, okay, working with associations, going to happy hours, building relationships first before we bring the brand into the conversation, was a really great way for us to go to market. And so as a result, then taking all those learnings from Austin, say, for example, and bringing them to Houston, figuring out which tactics we would do and which tactics we wouldn't do, that really helped us figure out, okay, if we just took the best ones out of Austin and we go and apply them in Houston, how did that pan out, right? Does that have the same effect? And then which ones do we want to double down on, right? So even in Houston, as we open up in Houston, we started doing things like sponsoring events. We've never sponsored events before. Does that help, right? So we start to just kind of broaden and kind of tighten as we go here, right? You almost go, okay, these start becoming the core things that we want to do. and then let's try and dance outside those lines a little bit, see if that gives us any additional bites, and then take the ones that do and add them back to the core, go apply them in a new market. Do they still ring true? If yes, then they become part of the kind of core go-to-market strategy. And so that's been super fun to experiment with, because every market is slightly different and we learn so much. And I'm always kind of thriving in the environments where I get to get all this rapid learning, right? And quick iteration. So over the last 3 months, that's basically what we've been doing in Texas, is really refining that go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, so it's like just quite a lot of experimentation still, and maybe you're still trying to work out whether there's like a, people normally have their one thing that they're like, okay, this just really drives it now.
I would say that we're very close to, like, we have probably 3 or 4 things that we'll do in a market right away because we know work really well, and then it's kind of flexing and bringing some creativity into that and seeing, okay, is there anything else that we want to kind of play around with to see if we want to add that. But yeah, we're getting pretty consistent, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm. Is there a lot? Oh, sorry. Oh, and anything else on the go-to-market?
Not that I can think of right now.
I want to touch on team building. How do you hire? What's your way? And
how do you fire?
How do you fire as well?
Well,
and how big are you guys right now as well?
We're 20. We're 20 in total full time. I think we're 12. That changes at times because we're constantly hiring and readjusting, especially on the go-to-market team.
You said that you're a product person. Sorry, I forgot the name. That is absolutely brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
How did you figure out that she is the right person to hire?
I didn't. My CTO did. I brought her in from a past life. I would argue that that's actually been the most challenging thing to reproduce, is finding great people with great networks to bring folks in. And it works sometimes, but it doesn't work other times. I have brought in my friends into the business to kind of fill holes. I've brought them in both as contractors and full-time employees. And it's not a path for me at least, it's not a path that I will continue to go down. I think it's very challenging. But I would say in terms of hiring the right people, we've started, I would say now we have more of a process than we've ever had, where we know what we're looking for, right? We know when we're when we're hiring for talent versus when we're hiring for skill. And what we do know is that when we hire for skill, the beast that is this company, that is constantly evolving and growing and maturing. When we hire for skill, we know that skill may not actually last very long in our company, because the company grows and needs a different skill very quickly. So we try as much as possible to hire for talent because we know talent will grow with the business. And that's something that's an innate quality, right? So we look for second order thinking about thinking, right? Are people able to do that versus just taking a task and doing? They might be exceptional. They might have exceptional skill, but if they can't ask themselves, why am I doing this? And is this the right thing I should be doing? And does this ladder up to the objectives of what we're trying to accomplish as a company? It makes it very challenging to grow that person. And so that's what we talk about when we talk about talent. We talk about their ability to second order think, their ability to connect dots that may not even be within their own scope, right? I've got developers who will come up and be like, okay, I've been watching the sales calls and I'm thinking we can do this when it comes to the sales approach. And it's just like your heart fills with such joy because you're like, oh my God, someone other than me is thinking about these things. And that just comes also with, hiring. We very rarely hire junior people. We hire a lot of senior people and people who have the ability to be chameleons, both in this stage of the business and as we evolve and grow into the next stages of the business. You asked about culture. I can speak about that too, but that's our that's our hiring process. And I would say our the way in which we work is we tell everyone, you come in walking in the door with 100% trust and confidence from the team that you're here to do what you can do, right? And it's only from there that you determine if you build upon that or drop from there. And a lot of people come in feeling like they need to prove themselves. And if ever we see that, it's usually like, you're not long for here. You don't understand that, like, we already know you're good at this shit. Like, you need to come in and start performing and building upon what we have, because likely you're coming in a role that we've actually never hired for before. And so we're assuming you know more than we do about what success is going to look like.
That's very thoughtful. I never heard that in the UK.
We're a very interesting culture. We're very different. I think it shocks a lot of people when they start working with us.
Why?
I think usually people say that, but that it doesn't actually, it's not produced, it's not actually felt. And so it's almost like people bring a lot of their baggage in terms of, having to, I don't know if it's like proving themselves to their leadership, or, having to do all the things you normally do in a job, which is, having to like show your worth up front. And it's like, we know you're good, come in, build upon what we have, spend time learning, and then we'll give you the low hanging fruit that you can start tackling right away. And if you tackle those, like, these are high priority things that no one's been able to touch so far. Like, these are ripe for you to take on. And usually what we see with folks that don't end up staying long is that they go, oh, okay, sure. And then let me build, something greater and bigger and show you how powerful and visionary I can be. And it's like, we gave you the recipe for success. Like, in terms of short term, you will build upon that. You decided not to do that. So, it's not going to be a fit. So it's a very bizarre, I think we're a very bizarre climate when people walk in, they don't realize they get so much of the trust and just confidence that, like, we know they can do all that fancy stuff. Come in and like kill some of these, quick ones so that we can all keep running.
Very good. Chloe, we ask everyone this question, but how does your product stay relevant in the age of AI?
Because it's Mercator AI as well. So
how does it stay relevant?
I mean, like defensibility. Like,
defensibility.
What stops open AI just saying, "Hey, tomorrow we release Mercator AI"?
Yeah.
I think. Wow, I think a lot of the interpretation. Again, unfortunately, there's nothing out there that OpenAI can pick up that would give them the recipe for how to build Mercator, right? Like, we're working off of what the internet's already produced. One, we are creating data sets, oftentimes, data sets that, for example, we've got a big AI project with Google right now for a data set that has not been able to be digitized in the past. So for us to build that, I think at the same time, just like having a data set upon which to build from, right? Like, everything we're doing with LLMs is from a place of known entity previously. We don't have any of that. Not all of our data is open, right? So there's a component of that. Sure, you could track permitting, but there's tons of companies who do that today. But stitching that whole story together requires actually a lot of human intervention to interpret what's going on. And that's stuff that's not necessarily out in the world. It's actually in a lot of people's heads. And it's in a lot of people's heads, not just in the same shape in all. What I'm trying to say is, like, it's not in one person's head, it's in a whole bunch of people's heads. And so we're having to apply a lot of like human interpretation that doesn't really exist out in the ecosystem that an OpenAI is saying is pulling from. So I would say, I mean, at the end of the day, you're still always going to need that human intervention to do the interpretation and to bring that to life. So I would say that's the biggest defensibility there.
Chloe, the last one for me is about mentors. So you mentioned earlier that mentor gave you a great piece of advice that you need to have some buffer. I think that's what that was, like 2 years of like shelter, and you know you will survive. How do you choose your mentors? Yeah, that's the question.
Chemistry, honestly, like it's really challenging to work with a person that I don't have massive respect for, or admire or get along with. There's a function of I do really love mentors who are very candid. I'm a very candid person. I don't like to I'm very curt and short with and short with my words, and so I'll be very direct. I don't know if that's the French side of me, but um I like people who are the same back to me, and give me really pointed feedback, and whose feedback I respect because I see that they're pushing me in directions that are uncomfortable for me. And usually it's like, you hit a little resistance and then you realize like, okay, take 2 days, think about it, and then kind of percolates, and then you come back and you're like, okay, I built upon your objection and where you've poked at my theories, or my hypotheses. And that to me is what continues the progress and the momentum and the growth. I'm not a fan of sycophants. I'm not a fan of people who just agree with your perspective. And I'm also not a fan of working with folks who on a human to human level, we don't have the same values. I find that really challenging.
Very good.
Very good.
Okay.
I have to agree.
No, you have to disagree.
That's my nature. I agree.
Cool. Okay, Chloe, thank you so much for joining us. Could you tell people where they could find out more about you and Mercator?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is mercator.ai. So that's MERCATOR.ai. And then they can also follow us on LinkedIn as well. We are offering free trials right now. So if you're in the Texas market, you can access Mercator for 7 days free, which is pretty exciting, because we like to give value before you invest in that value. So you get to experience it on your own. Yeah.
Very good. Thanks.
Thank you very much.